Hello, pretend internet friends. This is Andrew here with the Visual Collective to bring you another superb DIY session. Today we're going to be building a folding compact reflector. I'm sure you've seen the round reflectors that kind of twist into their own little tiny package. It's kind of like this. They're on a larger scale because we don't have flexible wire to work with, and I'm sure you probably don't either. But this is a reflector that works really well, especially for outside portraits with natural reflected light. Easy to build, might cost you $15 total for everything. So let's get into it. So the components you're going to need for this DIY are a sharp razor blade or an X-Acto knife or the sharpest Bushido knife that you've got in your kitchen. Some cardstock or cardboard if you've got boxes kicking around your house, you moved and you don't have the money to move again to a better place on the Upper West Side. You're going to need a straight edge of some sort, some black duct tape, and finally some Reynolds wrap. Keep in mind with the Reynolds wrap, the larger you make these things, the wider your Reynolds wrap needs to be, because it's really kind of a pain to create seams on the Reynolds wrap without it leaving it open to ripping and tearing, and you'll see what I mean when we get this thing put together. But that's all you need, so we're going to get kicking into it right now. Alright kids, so first things first, you want to take your foam core or your cardboard and you want to get it trimmed up to the size that you need or want for your reflector. We already have one piece of foam core here cut. We're going to use that as a template to cut our second piece. I think this is about 8 by 10, 8.5 by 11, somewhere in that neighborhood. And a reflector of this size would be great for headshots where you're shooting fairly tight, where you can get the reflector pretty close to your subject. If you're looking for something that's more for full-length portraits, you're going to want to build one that's significantly bigger. If you're not using a pre-cut piece as a template, you're going to want to use your straight edge and measure off the size that you're looking to build. Don't worry about that. We've got our two pieces of foam core cut now. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to take our aluminum foil and we're going to want to stretch or get pieces set up that are a little bit wider, and as you can see our aluminum foil is already a little bit wider than these pieces are, and a little bit longer as well. So we're going to pull out, you know, a piece about that long, rip it off. I would always suggest going for broke and getting the brand name Reynolds wrap aluminum foil, because the cutting edge on that is fantastic. If you buy the generic kind, you will probably use the whole roll before you get pieces that have straight edges on them. So once you have your piece ripped out, and we're going to do another one in just a moment here, what you're going to want to do is crinkle it up. The reason for this is, if you use a piece of aluminum foil that doesn't have any kind of break in the surface, you're going to get spotlighting, and it's going to create these odd, very hot spots on your subjects. You're going to have orbs and amoeba shapes of light on them. Whereas if you crinkle the surface up and make sure that it's pretty consistently crinkled throughout, it's going to diffuse the light in a way where there's going to be a consistent soft light over your subject as opposed to spotlighting. So once you've crinkled your foil, you're going to want to smooth it back out a fair amount. And for those of you who aren't savvy in the ways of aluminum foil, there are actually two different surfaces on aluminum foil. You have the inside, which is a slightly less reflective matte surface, and then you have the outside, which is a far more reflective surface. I would recommend using this one, especially for smaller reflectors, because you want to get the most out of the light that's available. So next thing, we want to take our crinkled aluminum foil and we're going to fold it over the edges of our cardstock. And now there's a few different ways that you can go about doing this. You can, if you don't really want to have, if you want to have a consistent surface on one side, you don't necessarily have to tape on this side. You can tape the back side only. I like to put a little bit of tape on this side and then fold it around. It really prevents the aluminum foil from floating up away from the surface. And if you allow the aluminum foil to float up away from the surface, the likelihood that it's going to tear in transportation or storage is pretty high. And even though they're cheap, you don't want to have to make more of these than you necessarily need. So once we've got that done, we're going to take a length of black duct tape, or silver duct tape, or white duct tape, whatever you feel like, and we're going to tear it out to approximately the length of our edge, and we're going to try and minimize the amount of tape that's on here to maximize our reflective surface. So we're just going to kind of put it maybe a 1/4 inch in, kind of smooth it out there, and we're going to fold it back around. If you've got too much overlap on your foil, as I do here, using a much larger foil surface, don't worry. And you're going to do that for all 4 edges. And one of your panels is complete. Now you're going to want to repeat this process for your second panel, and then you will attach the 2 panels together. Alright, so now that we've milled and expertly crafted our 2 panels, the next step is to attach the panels together. So what I would recommend, the best way to do this is to put the 2 panels with the aluminum side facing in, and then you're going to tape one of the spines. It doesn't matter which side you tape. You could tape the short side, you could tape the long sides. It is totally up to you and how you would like your reflector to fold. I happen to read real books that are taller than they are wide, so that's how I'm going to tape mine. So you're just going to rip out, again, a piece that's long enough to cover the long edge. If you got extra, you can trim it off. And you want to, not too much, because again, you can add extra to fix this bottom layer of tape in. So again, maybe a 1/4 inch, max of a 1/2 inch. And you want to keep these things flush together. And you're going to, as best as you can, roll that tape over, tape the spine, and then onto the back side as well. For those of you who have mastered working with duct tape, you know this stuff is pretty incredible, miraculous, and stupendous. And you also know it doesn't readily release its grip when there's a lot of it on something. So now that you have taped and double taped and perhaps even triple taped the outside spine on your book folding headshot machine reflector, we can now go ahead and lay it flat on the table. And as you can see, that outside spine works fantastically well. It's flexible, holds with exceptional holding power. It doesn't really matter how much black border you have on here. As I said earlier, you can have the black border, you can not. You can just tape it solely on the back. It's not really going to affect your overall surface area when it comes to reflecting. So you can just kind of pull out this full-blown, whatever, 1.5 to 2 inch strip of duct tape, or you can trim it down if you want. We're just going to use a full strip because we're not really worried about it here at the Visual Collective. And you're going to use this then with it laid flat as such, and you want to keep it kind of flush with the edge. And we're just going to tape that inside seam just to give it a little bit of added stability. And we'll just cut it off right there on the end, a little bit so we can fold over the edge, like so, and you'll see that that folds. Now that you've taped your outside spine and your inside spine, and your reflector is now all complete, these things are pretty durable, they're pretty weatherproof. If you use the cardstock, they could get wet. You can use them if it's raining. I don't know why you would need a reflector when it's raining, but if you did, if you were bouncing some kind of strobe or a dedicated off-camera flash, these are great for that as well. I've actually used these for quite a bit of night portraiture, where I've kind of used them almost over top of my subject and bounced flash into and then back down. It kind of gives a nice, almost like fire in the sky being abducted by UFOs kind of look to them. But these things are super easy to make, as you saw. Just a little bit of preparation, a little bit of supplies. You can get the stuff for these for probably less than 10 bucks. And that's to make one that's considerably larger for this. One of this size would be good for headshots, some pretty tight portraits. But again, I use one personally that's probably about 2.5 feet by 2 feet on each panel. And it's super versatile. I love using them for just daylight reflected into an open shade area. It gives nice, really soft, beautiful light, especially for portraits and fashion. So I am Andrew, and I am part of the Visual Collective, and this was Sunday Funday DIY. We'll see you guys here in 2 weeks for our next one.